Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. I had an amazing chat today with Brittany Schmidt. She is a fellow SLP BCBA, one of 7 who are dually certified down in Florida. And today we're talking all about the AAC Trial process. This can be extremely overwhelming. And she has a lot of experience in this area. So we talk about, well, how do we even get an AAC trial process started? How long does an AAC trial process usually last? She has some really great insights because now she is working with students who are deaf and hard of hearing, and she has some really great insights into apps, touch chat, etc., that can do some amazing things for students that I have not looked at the implications for, and I'm very, very interested in learning more. We talk about looking at the learner across their environment. I love that Brittany talks about using power words with our students. I just love that phrase so much. So if you are a speech therapist or BCBA and you are working with students who are emerging communicators who need a way to communicate with the world, but they're really struggling and finding that AAC device that's going to be helpful, this is a really wonderful episode, chock full of very specific details that will help you and your student on the journey to communication. Let's tune on in to this conversation.
You're listening to Autism Outreach Podcast, a podcast full of ready-to-use strategies to help those with autism strengthen their communication skills. Here's your host, Rose Griffin of ABA Speech, a speech therapist and board-certified behavior analyst who shares tips you can use in your next therapy session.
Welcome to the Autism Outreach Podcast. We have a wonderful show for you today. We have with us Brittany Schmidt. Thank you so much for joining us, Brittany. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
And I'm excited for you to share your journey. I don't know if I know your exact journey to being dually certified, but you've kind of been in my orbit for a while. I cannot remember how we first met, but I have this other company, Supervision Academy, and you did a group over there for us. That's for people becoming BCBAs. We provide remote supervision, and you do a lot of presenting and have a lot of good information to share. So can you tell everybody a little bit about you and just your journey into the field?
Absolutely. So I actually started as a SLP undergraduate student. And for the speechies out there, as you know, in undergrad, there's really not a lot of opportunity for that hands-on interaction really with the students. And it's like quasi type A, type B personality. It's like I really wanted to be a little more confident about what that life would look like. So I ended up taking a job at an ABA clinic, having no idea what ABA was, anything, which was like, these are kids with autism and developmental disorders that I would like to learn more about working with. And very quickly, 2 things happened. I fell in love with kind of the science and understanding of really looking at this child and seeing them for the big picture, part of a family dynamic, part of their environment, not just the behaviors that I'm seeing when they walk into my office or into the clinic, but really looking at, okay, how can we understand why these behaviors are happening? What purpose are they serving? And, what is their environment? How has their environment taught them to meet those needs? I mean, that was just really interesting to me to kind of take a little bit more of a holistic approach than maybe I had gotten in some of my early speech and language practicum. So then the other thing is very quickly I saw that my clients were being referred by their BCBAs out to speech and OT and these other professions. But unfortunately, they really just did not have the training or the support to handle kids who might have distress behaviors, who you might be getting aggressive or engage in some self-injury or even have some of the loudest screams that you didn't know that screams could get that loud, but it's, again, all with a purpose.
Right.
But when you don't have that training, you don't have that understanding, it's just like, well, goodness, how do I engage with this kid? How do I connect with this child? Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, a lot of those kids just did not have access to the services that I felt like we need an SLP on this team. We need an OT on this team to really reach this child. So very quickly, I was like, I'm going to do both. If this is the path forward for me to be duly certified as speech language pathologist and a behavior analyst, I felt like not only could I hopefully bridge that gap for those students in particular, but also help bridge the gap between the fields of showing, even more behavior analysts the benefit of having some of these other professions embedded in the team, and that no one felt like they were on an island having to figure it all out for this child on their own, that it really does take multiple perspectives to really understand how we can support a client. So I did many years of school that I kind of stacked on top of each other, because once I know what I want to do, I'm ready to do it, and I'm kind of full force. And so, yes, by the end of 2020, I was duly certified as both a speech language pathologist and a behavior analyst, and have been working kind of mainly with children on the autism spectrum or developmental disorders for now. And now I work for the University of Miami, specifically with children who are deaf and hard of hearing, but might also have an additional comorbidity. So it's maybe they are profoundly deaf, but also have autism, or they are bilaterally implanted, but they also have an ADHD or a medical complexity diagnosis.
Wow.
So that's kind of where I live now.
Amazing. I do like how you said that BCBAs were referring out for speech therapy and OT. I didn't want to sleep on that comment, because a lot of people say that BCBAs don't do that. And I'm sure that's true for some, because I've heard some horror stories, but I did like that comment. And I do think it's hard. I mean, I think that's what I try to do at ABA Speech is everything that I'm sharing is items that I've learned since graduate school. Like all the things Absolutely. I share are in my time working in non-public programs for autistic learners who really do struggle with having behavioral concerns. And obviously it's tied to communication. And I think that speech therapists can just feel really overwhelmed and like they're not doing enough, because we don't really have that training. And then now with social media in the mix, there's a lot of different competing ideas on there about how to best help autistic learners. So that can be really confusing as a professional. Do I throw away every single thing I ever learned in graduate school because somebody on Instagram said that I should? These things get complicated. It does get really complicated.
I even just tease apart of, okay, I would even hear, and I would get reports from SLPs that I respected, OTs that I respected in other forums, and them telling me, well, the student really doesn't have any intent to communicate. They're not ready. And it's like, well, for me, the fact that that chair got thrown across the room when you presented an activity that I know they didn't want to do, that was communication. Yeah. It might not be symbolic in communication. And it's clearly maybe not a safe way to communicate that need, but very clearly they are sending a signal that I have something to say. I just have no other way to say it besides engaging in these distress behaviors.
That's what's so sad. Yeah. And that's what's so sad is that I think people don't understand that kids get discharged from therapy or speech therapists. And I'm not saying just speech therapists, but people will say this student is not ready for, I'll never forget this. I was doing my BCBA supervision down in Austin, Texas, and we had a guy, his name was Jam. I always think about him. He's a BCBA. He would travel 3 hours one way to get his supervision in Austin.
Oh, wow.
I know. And yes. And he lived in a very rural area in Texas. And he had shared that one of the speech therapists said, well, so-and-so's not talking yet, so they're not ready for speech therapy. And I know he wasn't lying when he shared that. I know, it's sad. So, I think that we have to talk about those yucky things because they are here. But, I think we're just not trained enough. But I know what we're going to talk about today, something a little adjacent to that, but talking about AAC, which anytime we talk about AAC on the podcast or do a CEO, it's well attended, because I think the thing with AAC is that it's ever changing. So it's like a moving target. We're never sure exactly what's going on, and we have to try to dig into the research. And if you don't have a lot of experience with AAC, it's hard. You kind of just have to get in there even if you just have one student on a device. I remember learning LAMP, and I was like, what is this verb man? I mean, now I like LAMP, but I had a crutch. I had a speech therapy assistant, and she was the AAC Pranky guru. And I had learned helplessness. I was like, I can't look at that device. I can't. Okay, this is like 20 years ago.
Visually overwhelming.
It does.
And I always, give that or comparison to like what a family might see. Like if me, I'm an SLP with this many years of experience working with this population. And if I look at an app and I'm like, all right, I need to orient myself, I want to do another training, then I can only imagine a family seeing that. And unfortunately, I have heard stories where, they get the full evaluation. And then at the end of the evaluation, it's like, here's your device.
Yeah.
Here you go. And think about how much we spend, like you said, postgraduate, really trying to understand what's best for our clients. And then I sometimes think we miss, okay, we have the perfect thing. I designed the best system for this kid, forgetting, again, they're part of an environment. They're part of this communication partner dynamic. And if I don't have not necessarily like buy-in, every family like really wants their child to communicate, but if I'm not bridging that gap for the family to feel confident, like anything else, they're not gonna use it. I've seen where it gets tossed in the back seat as soon as you leave my session because it feels too overwhelming to embed that into your daily life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Device abandonment. We're going to post about that on Instagram soon. I just sent that to the designer. So today we're going to talk about the AAC trial process because I don't think we've touched on that when we've talked about AAC. So I guess, can you just tell us a little bit about your experience kind of with that AAC trial process? Because I think this is the thing too. Sometimes I almost think it's easier if you're working in a large district. Like when I worked in a district, it wasn't large, but we had a county ESC AAC specialist who I had a rapport with, and she would come in, Jennifer Mashburn. She was awesome. And she'd come in every single month because we had some contentious situations, but she became a really close friend of mine. But it was nice because I can't know every single thing about what's happening with AAC. So I've definitely over the years have definitely had different experience with that. But what's your experience kind of with that AAC trial process?
So for me, really, I would say as young as I might seem, I've kind of gotten to see really the evolution of it becoming such a more accessible thing. When I started, it was really, well, can you afford an iPad? Can you afford to download this app? Or are you willing to wait, sometimes 6 months, a year to really go through the insurance process? And when you have a client in front of you who does not have a reliable communication system, again, that's like, I can't wait 6 months to put something in front of this child to help them feel more powerful in their environment. So really at the beginning of my career, I was getting a lot of kids who had something that, maybe the parent had bought an iPad or they had gotten a device from someone else who said, I can get you the device, but I'm not sure how to teach you how to use it. I had a couple of those. Or maybe they had some sign or had some low-tech pictures, but there really wasn't a thorough individualized process of why we were using those things. And so the beginning of my career was really, okay, here's what we have. Here's maybe what the family is a little bit comfortable. They've started to get in the groove, or the client is using it. But then it becomes, okay, well, how well are they using it? Are they really approaching it on their own? Are they independently using it? Are they bringing it with them? Do they see it as part of their voice that is going to help them in an environment? And then what is kind of the ceiling of that device? Like, where could this system take them? Is it meeting their current needs, but also I want their language to continue to progress? Is it something that I think can grow with them? Or in, again, some maybe contentious situations, it's like, we can modify this to a point, but really we're going to have to kind of go back a couple steps and look at, there might be just a better system. We need to, I hate starting from scratch necessarily, but transition to having something else available. And that's really where the data collection process comes in with either a student who has something in place or students who really don't have anything in place yet of, okay, how can I expose you? And this is a little bit arbitrary, but I typically choose like 3 to 5 systems, or maybe not totally different systems, but variations within that system. So it's, maybe it's LAMP with like one hit versus LAMP with the multi-hit, or a touch chat with this size grid, PECs available, but also, a more device available, device plus some basic signs, and exposing those to those, kind of a total communication approach. And then really looking again, how often are you using it? What do you spontaneously use without a clinician prompt? How receptive are you to those clinician prompts? And then again, like across, it's not just what you do with me in my room, but ideally, and especially if you have the opportunity to work with some of the dedicated device companies, you can get loaner equipment for 2 weeks, for 4 weeks to really see, okay, in the therapy room, sure, but what about on the playground? What about at dinner? What about when there are peers involved? What does that look like for you? And where does the client tend to lean toward? And then even the next layer is, okay, are they leaning toward that because that's what they've been taught to do? Or are they really leaning toward that because that is the easiest and most fluent way for them to get their needs met? And then for me, I also tend to, if I can, kind of pick a couple what I call power words, like what is really going to help this learner feel more powerful in their environment. And see, okay, if I show you, the sign for candy or sign for apple, and then I have chicken nuggets on the device, or stop on the device, or stop in a sign, what is the skill acquisition differentiation? Are you picking up one more than the other and it's taking you just much faster? That kind of tells me, okay, you're learning this a lot faster, so I'm going to be able to really expose you to more in this avenue. And that really takes some being in tune with your learner and in tune with the family dynamic, because again, I could be like, this robust system, it's got everything you need, it's beautiful, but if we're, we've been working and we've been modeling and we're doing highly motivating activities and you're still, gesturing to me and trying to sign to me, that tells me that that's more so the path that you want to go down and that feels more comfortable to you. The other thing is, it doesn't have to be just one thing either. I would say none of my students and none of us as adults only use one method, one modality of communication. Sometimes it's like this, like, it's great. I want to have a chat. This is a great discussion. Sometimes I would rather it be an email or a text or talk. And sometimes when you are overwhelmed or tired at the end of the day and you get home and you sit on the couch and you do not have to say anything to your partner, they can tell just by your body, you're not up for that vocal communication right. And so I try to extend that same courtesy to our learners. It's like, yes, can use this device, or they are consistently using this system or signs, but that doesn't mean when other factors are happening that, again, we're distressed or it's new or we're hungry or tired, that we always have to now use the device. I always try to make sure, is there something that you can do just with your body to signal to everybody, I'm a little upset right now. I need some space right now. Because that's what we as adults do too. Is we don't always have to tell this full, long, beautiful sentence of how we're feeling. We can get that message across. And as long as the message is getting across, then I feel like we've accomplished what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It reminds me too of goals where people want a student to use a sentence, and I'm like, nobody uses a sentence in that way. Like why? Yeah, I like the idea, extend that same courtesy to our learners, because why would we have them create this grand sentence if a typical language learner is not going to put forth that effort? And it doesn't make sense in that
And we
moment.
wouldn't expect that from them, just
yeah,
like love, no is a complete sentence.
right.
Same thing. No
Yes.
is no. And I really try to be conscious of, obviously, I want my learners to have like a generative language system, and I want to expose them to grammar if that's
Right.
their repertoire. But we vocal communicators do not use perfectly grammatical sentences. I've had probably 12 run-on sentences in this conversation. You've understood what I'm trying to say. So it's also that aspect of, if I'm going to increase the response effort, I want to make sure the consequence changes too. So this is a little bit of a soapbox, sorry. But for example, one of my favorite, or I guess least favorite things, is like when you're teaching, requesting is the easiest example of like, okay, they can ask for chicken nuggets. And then now we're going to teach, I want chicken nuggets. The consequence is the same. When they said chicken nuggets, they got chicken nuggets. When they said I want chicken nuggets, they still just get chicken nuggets. So all I've shown this learner is, I need more from you to get the same. And that's when I start to see, okay, well, I don't always have the capacity to give you this longer sentence, much less, Miss B, I want more chicken nuggets, please.
Oh, yeah.
But still just getting chicken nuggets. Like, it sounds beautiful. It sounds socially appropriate, but it hasn't improved their communication effectiveness, really. It's just kind of increased the response effort. Whereas if you really introduce kind of how we're combining different words, are we going to cut the chicken nuggets? Are we going to heat up the chicken nuggets? No more. I want to share the chicken nuggets. That's really where I try to live, of not just expanding in that sense of more and more grammar, but really changing like the different communicative functions of what you're doing. And does the system kind of allow you to be as specific as the learner might want to be?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great thought. And good to point out, because just because a student is saying more words together, that it may not be the end all goal. Yeah. And then kids get frustrated, and then we know how that all goes. So it's not good. How long does an AAC trial last? I mean, I'm just thinking, when I was in a school, I would do trials. It seems lengthy. This isn't something that happens 1 week, right? I mean, how long, is there an average duration? Honestly, I haven't done one myself in a while. So what is the average duration?
I do think it really depends on your setting. Obviously, in school SLPs, you might have just restrictions that are inherent to your district. And maybe, you and the other SLPs or OTs on your team can get teamed together for some advocacy. But I have worked with districts where this is the system we use, and this is the only system that's going to be available for that child.
Yikes.
And the SLP, really has to get creative of like, okay, I wouldn't have necessarily picked that system for this child, but how can I make it work? Because this is just what I have available.
Yeah.
So those can be very quick because you got, one option.
Right.
For me, and I actually had an evaluation last week where I was talking to a parent of like, okay, so we came here for this 2-hour speech and language evaluation. So then tomorrow we're going to come for the AAC evaluation. It's like, not quite. Now I get to take all this information from our speech and language evaluation and from my interviews with you and hopefully the teacher, and then really determine, okay, what types of systems do I think we want to trial? And again, how that arbitrarily, I would say about 2 to 4, 6 weeks to really see. But for me, it's less time-based and more, have I really seen enough across enough environments, across enough communication partners, that this system is going to improve your life enough that not that I stop evaluating, but it's like, okay, this is enough for me to let's move forward with this. The trick for me is I'm kind of constantly evaluating what that system looks like. Because, maybe we do this and we decide, okay, a 36 grid with this, but actually I really need a true grid to help you. And I find that out a week later that, okay, now I want to bring in a grid and help you really localize those pieces. Or maybe as we go and like you're really starting to put more words together, now I want to make sure that everything is color coded, or maybe when you select it, it lights up. I've had kids who, working with kids with hearing loss, that becomes maybe really important. Or maybe there's a visual impairment, twitching the contrast of the pictures, having it vibrate when you pick it. There really are so many features. And again, like you said, it's changing rapidly. But one of the other things I try to tell students and families is, just because this system isn't perfect or isn't working as well as we thought it was, does not mean that like AAC in general can't help this student. It just means we need to continue to dynamically assess, okay, when we do this over here, this is a little bit better. Maybe in the classroom, we don't like that when we, are creating a word that everyone can hear us create the sentence. So now I want to make it to where it only says the sentence when you click the sentence bar. So no one, hears you think about what you might want to say and you're ready to share it.
Oh, I like that. That's a sweet, respectful. I like that. There's a lot to think about. So,
it really is.
so are there AAC devices? Because now I'm thinking about a client. Are there AAC devices where you press it and it lights up? The button lights up? Really?
Absolutely.
What app is that? Or is that
several different ones? So I know Snapchat can do it. I know TouchChat can do it, and you can even make it where sometimes it'll light up as you press, but not light up when you take it away. Sometimes it only lights up once you remove it. So you have like a touch hold. And I even have kids who maybe have difficulties localizing that point feature. So working with OT or PT, and maybe if at first we just have that kind of, they take their whole hand across the device, I can program it to wherever that hand stops and lifts, that's what's selected. They don't have to necessarily have the perfect point to use a selection-based system.
Okay. That's good to know.
There's so much. That's what I tell my supervisees, and this was beyond just AAC. It's like if something feels like it's taking too long or if it's annoying to do, I promise there's an easy way. You might just have to include, get a mentor and expand your team to really see like, well, what else is out there that could make this a little bit easier for this student? And there's just so much. Really where I do kind of think there's two like buckets. There's the SLPs who you see a lot of different types of students, and you, like you said, might have one or two or three kids who are like, okay, I feel like this is going to be the best path for you. And that's really where, okay, do you have reps in your area? And the reps are really helpful if you're working with a dedicated device. They're lovely people. They are in it for the right reasons, but also they want you to feel comfortable with the device because they want you to recommend it to families.
They're in sales.
A lot of those trainings are free and available to us. You can get copies of the apps for free. You can get training on, a lot of the different apps. I know TouchChat for sure, because I was just talking to an SLP about that, where they'll really have on-demand free trainings to help you understand, okay, what really could all of this device do for me?
Is TouchChat, but that's not a dedicated device. That is an app, correct?
It is an app, but you can get it embedded in a dedicated device.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Does TouchChat have reps? I'm going to be Googling.
Everybody's got a rep.
Okay.
Everyone, even they're like, ProLocal is and ProLocal to go. Their newer app, that is truly an app-based system.
Yes.
But they do have a really great fax system with a ton of videos that you can watch on demand, or a great help system. And even that is the thing, a lot of these companies, they want the SLPs or OTs or whoever's on this team to understand how to use it and also understand how they could make it better. At the beginning of this year, Avaz, which is a newer, reached out to my team to do a whole focus group with my team of what could we change? What could we do better? And so if there is an app where you're like, okay, this is pretty close to what I would like to use, but maybe this one thing that I think, reach out to the developer of the app or see if they have a website where you can, have a help ticket. And again, they want this product to serve more kids.
Right.
Typically pretty responsive to what it could do, or really going to help you. Okay, well, we can't do quite that, but here's what else we could do to maybe bridge that gap.
Yeah, it's so much to know. I think like that's what it is. As a school-based SLP, I know people are just really overwhelmed, but it sounds like it'd be a good like PD day where if you can like just make up your own PD, maybe you have a touch chat day or that's what I want to do. I have a student that has hearing impairment. And so I'll be emailing you after the show today. I haven't done AAC in that way in a really long time. It's, so that's the thing with AAC is you do start to feel really rusty if you haven't had kids that you're programming devices for, and it can feel really it can feel overwhelming when you're not doing it. So these are really good ideas. I think it's good just to talk about it because there's some speech therapists, they might be the only speech therapists in a rural district working preschool to 12th grade. That's a reality for some people
to know it all, do it all,
right? It's like, how do you
kind of, there's the pros and cons of social media influences and all those things, but it really can be a great tool to connect with people who can help guide you. And even if it's not, obviously like sitting down in the assessment by any means, okay, what would be a good launching pad? What are some trainings you might recommend? And there really just is so much. I'm a big believer that there's a lot out there for free. Of course, there's some things that are,
or the ABA Speech Connection is affordable.
Correct.
We actually, we're coming out with a whole an AAC course in January of 2024, and but all about AAC assessment. What does the intervention look like? How can you go beyond requesting and all these things? Because it's a time of constant learning, and I think that's the thing is we have to get in there. But anytime we talk about AAC, this is helpful because I feel like it's not something that people talk about a lot. And I think that you don't know it until you really get into it. And then you're like, oh dear, the student needs a device. And what are we going to do? And I want to help him.
Layers. And really, the other point I like to make is, again, you can really understand the student and what their communication needs are, but you have to look at them as part of their community. And again, if part of your sessions is not bringing in those communication partners so that they feel comfortable and confident, again, you're going to have such limited carryover. And I know that's always like, oh, they didn't bring their device to session again. And it's like, that tells me that this parent does not understand how valuable it is. It's not that they don't want their kid to communicate. Of course they do, but they haven't understood just how well. And so with some families I've had, okay, I'm going to record a video of what we can do with this session. And I've had parents, break down sobbing of like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. They had all of these ideas in them ready to communicate, but I just didn't know. I've had really involved parents where I have made binders of visuals. Okay, here's how you get to each of their power words. The top, let's start with 5 words or 3 words even that I know this child wants to be able to talk to you about. So let me show you and have this little visual that you can refer back to of how you get to those. So I can break it down as much as possible. Which again, not every SLP is going to have time for those things. But what's nice is there's a lot of those resources that are available. So you don't have to constantly recreate the wheel.
Yes. I like the idea of the video. And I did do that. I had a very high profile client in my district I worked in for 10 years, really affluent. And what I did for that parent is, we had a video release. I did have my own dedicated iPad, which was really great. And so I would once a month take a clip of what we were doing that was correlated to an IEP goal and objective. And it was nice because the student had outside ABA services. The parents were living in different homes. And so they, could share amongst the team, and extended family were involved. So it was nice because, that's the one thing that we know is like, we could tell you about it, but until you actually see it and then you try to implement it, to generalize it, like you're saying, this more holistic idea of the learner, which I think speech therapists are really good about thinking about the student that way. It's a good idea. So I think taking one thing from this episode is thinking about the student kind of in their community and in their environment. I think that's hard for school-based SLPs. Like you say, is it a clinical model versus an educational model? There's going to be differences. But when I'm working in a school, I just always try to think of, like I kind of do at ABA Speech, like, how can I streamline this process? Absolutely. How can I make this easier so that we can accomplish the goal?
Really what the child's motivated to talk about.
Right.
I have a teenager who, if you were to just truly test her on using the device, which is already kind of charged language, but if it was, okay, let's look at this book and what do you see? It would have been like that device meant nothing to her.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before. Absolutely not. But when we talked about grandma and what we did over the weekend, and I had pictures from home, then it was like she's, doing 3 and 4 hits and going in folders because she wants to talk about those things. And then I was seeing, again, phrasing and grammar from her that I hadn't seen on a much lower level, but it's because I wasn't really, what do you want to talk about? What is going to help you be a better communicator and empower you? And so then that was just a great thing for then the mom to see. I just had a conversation with my daughter that I never thought I'd be able to have. I'd be able to just chat about what we did last night.
Yeah.
And it's really, for me, when parents sometimes are concerned about, what the impact of a device or a system might mean for their vocal communication, but then they see, okay, but look how much more engaged this child can be, and they have so much more to say. That can be really a nice bonding moment for the family to see, oh, okay, this is why I want to use this. This is why I want to learn how to use this, is to bridge that engagement.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Such great information today. Oh my goodness. And Brittany is going to be coming to do a talk for us that is available to the public at no cost in 2024. And then people in the ABA Speech Connection, our membership, will get access to the CEU. So I'm excited about that. I know we'll dialogue about that offline. And where can people find out about more about you and your work? Do you have a website or maybe your email or something that we could, I'm sure people might have a question about the AAC trial process.
Yes, I do have a website. It is Thrive and then clinicalsolutions.com. Let me just make sure. I always second guess myself because yes. So, and I can send that in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah.
Make sure.
Absolutely.
But my email is schmidt@thriveclinicalsolutions.com. And that's kind of just my separate. I'm very happy to help consult or just chat and just kind of lead people in the directions. Coming from an ABA background, I was so used to, okay, I'm an RBT, I get this supervision, now I'm a BCABA, I still have this lovely supervision. And as much as there's a little bit of that in speech, it's like once you get your C's, you're on your own. And it does not have to be that way, I promise. It's like like you said, if you're a school SLP or pediatric general SLP with any kid who could walk through your door, that doesn't mean that you need to know anything that could walk through the door. It's really helpful to kind of have that community and just, again, grow as a clinician, see who can balance your clinical needs for all the good of the client.
Love that. Such a great time talking with you. And thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Autism Outreach. If you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode full of actionable strategies you can use in your therapy room. Write a review too. That would mean so much to me. I always love hearing from you. Have a specific topic that you want included on a future show? Reach out over on Instagram, ABA Speech by Rose, or visit me at www.abaspeech.org.